Thank you for joining this webinar. Today we are going to talk about how to sell food in the US, and above all, we are talking about an events that we are hosting in New York the 28th of June, and of course we will give you some suggestion how to be in some fancy food trade show. My name is Mauro Bandelli, and I work for GenUSA, a company that helps Italian and European companies to have their own organization in the US. In this webinar, we have three nice guests. One is Jeremy Mottola, and the other one is Steve Diasio, that are two buyers that will be at our event in New York, and I welcome them. And of course, I thank them to be in our event. And also there is Gianni Succi, that is the general manager of a company, an Italian company in the US that is the other side of the other side of the situation, is the one of the seller in the US. So thank you very much. I'm talking in English because I'm sure that we have received many registration for this webinar, and half of them are not Italian. So that's why I'm speaking in English. But as you know, as you can listen, my English is not fluent, so I'm not native English. So my Italian exhibitor, Italian company, can understand me very well. So let's proceed. Let's talk about a little bit, just a few minutes for GNSA. Then we will ask the buyers to talk about what they expect from the company that want to sell food in the US, and also I will ask Gianni Succi, that is at the moment in Los Angeles, and is very early in the morning over there. And thank Gianni for joining us early in this morning. So he will give us some suggestion how to be more effective in the US. Selling food. So also, if you want to have the immediate translation of what we say in your own language, it is possible to click down at the CC tab, and also you can select your own language. That could be Spanish, French, or Dutch, or whatever, and you can listen. You can read the immediate translation of what you say in your own language. So who we are? We are a company that supports US, European company to have their own organization in the US. We are not directly related to the sales. In fact, we don't get any commission from sales that could happen from companies to the buyers. We don't get any money. We don't sell for our company, but we help them to run their organization in the US. So we are able to set up companies, and we are able to run all the administration, logistics, and all the operation in the US. Of course, we have a presence both in Europe, where we can talk with managers and owners of the company, and we have people in the US where there are a lot of employees that can deliver the service that we provide. Also, I'm proud to say that we are not focused only in the food industry. We offer the same services to all the other industries. Why companies buy our services? First of all, because we are focused on this market. Even if in the last 2 years we have opened the same, we offer the same services in Emirates and Saudi, and soon will be offered also in Brazil. And also, we are a one-stop source. It means that companies that need many services in their journey to the US, we are able to provide them this service from the market analysis to the legal and tax issues or whatever. Of course, many services are offered internally, and some of services are offered through partners. These are some of our customers that work with us since for many years. And so let's talk about a little bit this market. First of all, I want to say that this market is very important, and it is forecasted that in the next 50 years, it will be always the third economy in the world. One of the three economy in the world in the future 50 years. It means that when you approach this country, it is important to have a long-term strategy. We always say the company don't focus to the immediate sales, but to build up a long-term strategy, because when you enter in this market, you have to stay there for not for 1 month to 2 months or one year, but for 5, 50 years. This is very important to say that. And also, this is the list of the services that we provide, and I just talked a lot about it, but we provide for sure market analysis, all the consultancy that needed to be in the US, but also we provide all the services that are needed to run the company in the US. These are our offices. We have offices in the company is incorporated in Miami, but also we have a big office in New York, and in Europe we are based in Italy. Kamal, I think that it's your thank you for time, and Kamal will introduce also the event that we are promoting.
Thank you, Mauro. Good afternoon to everybody watching from Europe, and good morning to our panelists that are all joining in from the US this morning. Thank you all for being with us. As Mauro mentioned before, we are organizing a special networking event in New York, where we're bringing buyers together with European exhibitors, vendors, so on and so forth. And this morning, we actually have dozens of companies watching us, mostly Italian, but about 12 companies from France, Germany, Spain. So thank you very much for joining us today. We hope that the information we're going to share with you is going to be helpful. So without further ado, I want to jump in and introduce a couple of our special guests, and then we'll come back to explain a little bit more about the event. Mauro, can you go to the next slide, please? So today we have two very important buyers from the US who we've known for quite some time now. We've gone to several events together, and they've had the pleasure to join a couple of our events in the past. So I wanted to invite them on just to have a discussion with them about different success stories that they've had, or perhaps to share their opinions on basically give advice as to what works and what doesn't work for a European brand who wants to sell their product to the US. We have Jeremy Mottola. He is the CEO of Watch Hill Group. He's been in the hospitality and food service industry for quite a while now. He has led purchasing strategies for major national brands, and now he helps connect suppliers with US operators. I know he works a lot with Italian companies and other companies in Europe. Additionally, we've got Steve Diasio. He's an affiliate with Bloomin' Brands. And Bloomin' Brands, for those who don't know, is a large restaurant company that owns about five different brands, including Carrabba's. And so he has, let's say, a wide network of products that he purchases for and makes purchasing suggestions for. As a strategic advisor, he is mostly out there to see what are the emerging trends, not only on food products themselves, but also to advise companies on where to expand to in the US, what regions are better for what kind of products, and just to overall advise about these different trends. So, thank you guys for joining today. Let's get started with, I guess, the overarching scope of everything. And by the way, for everybody watching, there's the Q&A button at the bottom. If you have any questions for me, for Mauro, for any of our guests, please don't hesitate to ask, and we'd be happy to answer what we can. To get things started, I wanted to ask you both, do you find that European companies are generally prepared for how business is done in the US? And if so, what could be some of the learning curves? What are some steps that European companies perhaps at first don't realize about the US market?
Go ahead, Steve.
Perfect. First, it's an honor to be here. Thank you, Kamal. Thank you, Mauro. Um, the US is a big country and it's very diverse. So, depending on what your strategy is, you may have different approaches to these different regions. Um, and this may include tastes, preferences, types of consumers. Right now in the US, what's happening in the South is very different than what's happening in the North economically. So this may impact or influence your choices of how you're going to market here in the US or your types of strategies that you want to grow within this type of market. So the US is very diverse, regionally, population-wise, and their preferences. And one thing that I want to highlight in terms of um, doing business in the US is that uh, we generally are looking for partnerships. However, partnerships for us often means a round of kind of making it easy and convenience, meaning understanding and kind of being reliable based off of the characteristics that we're looking for. Since
Do you?
buyers, yes, tell me.
No, sorry, continue.
Since buyers don't make the decision solely on.
Sorry, Steve, can you unmute? Sorry about that. Yeah.
Perfect. Uh, since buyers in the US use a team to make decisions on where they're going to buy because they have a variety of options, it's important that they understand how these companies or Italian companies and products are differentiated. And this might be how they're different from other products. So maybe it's highlighting their certificates, highlighting the PDOs, what makes them unique, and it needs to be memorable because that one individual buyer that you connect with, they need to communicate that same message to a variety of stakeholders as they continue to talk to their own internal bosses, teams. And if they don't have a good understanding, because maybe they're not so familiar with the different regions or products within Italy, and if they can't easily communicate that or remember that, or maybe how can you provide assets if it's digital or different types of informative sheets, then we're missing the opportunity to make that partnership, we'll say, more convenient and easy. At least that's the first step that I've identified. Jeremy, maybe you have some other ideas?
Yes, some great points, Steve. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here. Good afternoon, good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, much on what Steve says, being able to clearly and effectively communicate how your product or service is different, really, than maybe what's out there. The person that you're going to be presenting to, or the potential partner, the potential customer. You're right, Steve. Right? It's not like it's quite often it's not the exclusive decision maker. They need to go back and build consensus, if you will, or really kind of pitch it to their team because it's a group effort, perhaps, on why this company and why this service, why this product. So, how effectively they communicate that in that first meeting, whether it be 20 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, like you say, the digital collateral or any of the information shared is really going to be a good point of differentiation. having a clear strategy on how to approach the U.S. market, I think, is something that I see companies, you know, one, you have to really be committed to it. We have a huge middle class here, and they love to spend a lot of money on meals away from home. So, like Steve said, what happens in certain parts, you're in Florida, it's a different market than what happens in New York and beyond, and different than LA or Southern California, for example. So, understanding what you're offering and how you're sharing that out there. Um, three types of strategies, really. I mean, you got a pricing strategy, which is sometimes a little boring. You got the differentiating strategy, which is wonderful, but most often you'll see a hybrid of both. And getting organized and really, knowing where your product or service or brand is going to fit into the market, and each of those subset markets can really make the difference for success. I will take the opportunity to add, American consumers, American buyers love to, the European brands, particularly the Italian brands, for example, are well branded. They're usually well organized in their European markets. When they come here, to understand the differences in this market, which may seem confusing, and to some extent that it is, having that level of engagement, really getting involved and understanding that people want to do business with companies that are set up here, that aren't, just trying to do everything X works Italy or X works Spain or what have you, X works Germany. Having that business based here is going to be hugely helpful. And of course, this is what I think everybody on this call, helps out with. So
I think no, Jeremy, you nailed it with that last comment because with a lot of the companies that we work with, they have great products. Many companies here in Italy, in Europe, have great products, or else they would not be so successful as they are in the
agreed.
European market, and they know how to do business in their home countries. And many times, not all, but many times they think that they can replicate the exact same thing, the exact same strategy by exporting a product into the US market and hope that it sticks, hope that people know who they are and what their brand means. But a lot of the times, they fail to realize the size of America, the way that America works, the fact that it's so spread out. There are different regions. It's like having many different countries in one.
Yeah.
Um, you
Like
touched on
50
something
different
important.
countries, maybe. Yeah.
50, yeah, if not more. I'm from Texas, and just Texas itself is like five different countries. But
Case in point, of
you
course.
touched on something about the logistics that I think was quite interesting, and I wanted to ask you, when you're looking to buy products from these European companies, does it uh, sweeten the deal a little bit? Does it help if they already have warehousing and logistics in the United States, or is that a non-factor for you?
In my experience, it unequivocally absolutely does have a benefit to having a flagpole per se, or an office per
Mm.
se, or a building with where, even a little bit of inventory per se. We'd all love to see and be able to purchase, right? Everybody that's watching this call would love to sell X Works Italy, X Works Spain, X Works Germany. The reality is, it's not to say it can't happen, but the reality is it tends to start a little more slowly, I think, for a lot of products, brands, and services. So having the ability for customers here in North America to trade with a business that's set up here in North America is a certain level of comfort. It's not unique to the US. I'm sure there's a lot of other places in the world that have a similar sentiment, but I see the companies that do take that step, that do have an office, a warehouse, however big or small, whatever the investment is, they seem to get a little more traction early on because of that first step versus say some of the companies that are based purely in Europe and want to send emails and meet at shows, and those are all great things. They're all part of it. Don't get me wrong, but having a business set up here or having a warehouse set up here will unequivocally increase the chances for success in my experience.
One of the things that we hear a lot when we give this recommendation, or they come to us with questions about how to enter the market, is just that to have some sort of logistics hub or a warehouse. But then, rightly so, it's a large upfront investment, especially for a country so large and so far away from Europe. People are scared, they're hesitant to make that initial investment without having a deal signed. Would help me to I try to separate the two things because what I've seen is that a lot of deals are lost because of this logistics issue, people waiting to have a contract signed before doing the warehousing. But at the same time, the buyers and the purchasing managers and whatnot are willing to sign a deal right off the bat once the warehousing is there. So can you touch a little bit more on the importance to say, you know what, if you come here, of course, it's not guaranteed results, but you can mitigate XYZ.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a couple ways to look at it. There's the short-term strategy and the long-term strategy on how you're going to take that business. For the companies that take the long view on it, getting that warehouse or getting a partner, even someone to help you, and sharing, maybe sharing the cost or sharing their expertise, their tacit knowledge of the local markets or the overall market, what have you. Finding a partnership like that will definitely give the buyers more confidence in doing so and trading with them. It's not to say that they whatever their hesitation is solely based on that, but boy, it helps. And I think Steve will we'll get him on this topic as well. It's just a matter of comfort zone, comfort level, if you will. Having that product based in New Jersey, based in Memphis, based in Los Angeles, wherever it is. It's a consumer behavior. I think it boils down to that.
And now to that point, I want to jump in and ask to Steve. So we've discussed why it's important to have already logistics warehousing in the US. Um, how important is it to have a local employee of the company, a local American representative, or somebody who speaks fluent English for communication purposes?
Perfect. So all of these types of ideas, so it's very important that having this local operations or the contact person, all of these signal this idea of being adaptable, reliable, readiness, and it already identifies that you have a certain strategy that you're coming to that region or to that market. And all of that are tick boxes that the buyers and the US companies are looking for to say, you are reliable, you're a long-term player. We want to do business with that. We can rely on you if we need products in the short, medium term, and we can grow together. So all of these are just tick boxes that the U.S. Buyer is looking for to say, this is a reliable partner that we can grow and continuously adapt with. And it's kind of the minimum that needs to almost happen, at least in the beginning, in order to justify getting into that relationship together and signals a level of quality that matches your products and matches your commitment and evidence through your investment in the region.
And talking about the different channels that you go through to meet vendors, to meet basically to find new products to buy. Um, what types of avenues do you go through? What types of avenues do you trust the most? Let's say do you prefer to go to trade shows, referrals? Do you do site visits? I guess what's been the most successful type of way to actually meet
Yeah.
these companies?
A lot of it has to do with what type of product we're looking for. But if we're looking for continuous new products and services to bring it to the market that are well established, one of the cheapest ways and most effective in terms of return on investment is going to these trade shows. Because when we get to experience the tested products, if they're Italian, German, Spanish, Swiss, and we see that and we taste them, and they've already been proven in your region or within Italy or within Europe, that gives us a greater confidence and to help us understand and visualize that because, of course, each country has their own different norms, food, and helps us take that experience and pitch that to those who the collective that makes the decision for new products, for R&D, for testing, for new menus. So certainly, when we're looking to expand or make changes to drive top line revenue, trade shows are the most effective. When it comes to maybe lowering cost, word of mouth, or if we're looking to mitigate certain risks with other buyers, we might use those that we know in the industry to do maybe adjacent or complementary products. But certainly, trade shows is a wonderful way to get exposure to a range of new products that might be well tested in other parts of the world, but haven't reached here in the US. That's why going to trade shows for me is understanding the new trends because US is a bit late in a lot of these types of food trends and that's where we get exposure to what's happening around the world.
And about these trade shows, I know from experience, Steve, we went together to CJEP a few months ago, which is a large food exposition here in Italy, in Rimini. And I'm sure in your experience, you've visited many other trade shows, even in the United States. You're going to Summer Fancy Food coming up in a couple of weeks. Do you see a difference in the way that companies present themselves to buyers in European trade shows versus in American trade shows? And if so, what advice would you give to European companies to improve their presentation to be more attractive to people like yourselves buying their products? And this is open to Steve or Jeremy.
Absolutely. The Italian products and companies have a wide history, a long history, a wonderful history, but sometimes it's very hard to digest of what makes it unique. So I met with maybe 10 coffee buyers, and they would say, family business from this region. And when I'm not able to document all of this, or I don't have assets to be able to take it back to my firm, some of these get lost. So understanding, being able to communicate what differentiates and kind of hitting these tick boxes of what our strategy is. We're looking to expand in the Northeast region because we believe our buyers are, who have this type of income or these types of preferences, opposed to Florida, which are seasonal, or different, the middle of the US, which may not have the income to support certain costs raises because of the tariffs or something like this. These types of uh, points help us identify where we can fit it in into our distribution or into our product line or into our broader business. So understanding how you differentiate, bring that story to life. Maybe that story might be framed different for the American buyer, because maybe they're not so familiar with everything that happens in Europe or in Italy, and helping them frame that of why it's different in this unique region. If it's the flavor profile, the coloring, the taste, maybe even the history, but make it memorable for them so they can take that message back to their community and who the decision makers are, and have them create easy digital assets, YouTube links, different videos that help engage that US buyer so they can share that with other decision makers. That's some of the differences that I've noticed.
Yeah, engagement too, right, Steve? So when we go to those shows, I mean, first off, going to the European trade shows, is great for ROI. You're going to meet a very rich variety of companies and brands, and again, all the different services that they offer. It's a great opportunity, and I think the level of engagement was positive when I was there at CJIP earlier this year. I think the follow up on some of those companies, could have been a little stronger. Not everybody, but sometimes, and that's not exclusive to one event or one host of buyers or host of vendors for that matter. And like Steve said, having that success story, making that impression of things that have worked in this market, and here's why, things that have worked in this market, and maybe this is the reason why. It could very well be translated to things in the US, like we all have said multiple times already. There's different pockets, different markets within the North American market. What happens in Toronto, Canada is distinctly different than what happens down in parts of Texas, for example. I mean, you're in North America, but you're a world away in many ways. So
I'd like to bring Johnny into this conversation to get your perspective as somebody who is Italian, but you've been living and working in America, interacting with U.S. buyers for quite some time. Do you think that these comments that Jeremy and Steve are making, I guess, how would you, what's your perspective on this?
Okay. I've listened to Jeremy and Steve very carefully and with great attention, because although I'm here in the food industry since more than 10 years ago, there is always something to learn, and I would like to meet with Steve and Jeremy in the very next days before the food show, the fancy food show in New York, and also during the fancy food show in New York, because I am also on the other side of the barricades, because I represent an Italian company that sells successfully in the United States. What I want to underline is this. There are many different types of approaches for this marketplace, because first of all, it depends on the level and the size of the operation of this I'm talking about Italian company now. But of course, I know that we have Spanish people online, and we have also Swiss guys, whatever. Then there are different levels of interaction these people they want to have with buyers and potential customers. It depends if this is a very first approach to the US market, or if these companies are already established. So then we have a variety of food shows, regional shows, distributors' own shows. Of course, again, what I can try to recommend to the company that are participating to this webinar, the first question, is this your very first approach to the US market, or are you already there? When did you start? If you start from scratch, what I suggest is that you, as already Steve and Jeremy, they have already underlined, just highlight very carefully the sales process of your products. Be very careful with the size of your operation, because if you are working in food service or you're working in retail, if you are a $2 million company, do not approach Walmart, for example, because you're wasting time. So you have to try to tailor also and to have very clear goals in the marketplace according to your size, to the type of product that you sell. It depends if you are food service or retail. These are the main two categories that you stay here or you stay there. Sometimes you stay in both sides. I stay in both sides.
Thank you.
Know, even if most part, I'm mainly here for the food service operation, food service sales with restaurants and stuff like that. I sell pasta, the number one pasta in the world, in my opinion, in terms of quality, fresh frozen pasta. I'm not talking about the dry pasta. But we do also retail. We do retail with Trader Joe's, which is a big customers that we have here in America. But so approaching the retail and the food service industry are two complete different things. It's different the language that you speak, because my broken English is very helpful for me in the food service, because they say, oh, he's the real deal, because he speaks a broken English, so he's Italian. He knows what he's talking about, So, and just try to understand exactly who you are in the very beginning and what you want to be. And don't be scared about timing, because timing is going to be on your side if you give yourself some time. Don't think you come to America. I'm talking now to the beginners of the American market, of course. So for other people of this webinar, my thinking can be a little bit uninteresting. But approach the very first time the market. Give yourself some time. Don't attend the fancy food show once, and then you come back home with a pocket of business card like this, and the minute after you are back home, you don't know exactly what to do, because that's the main thing. So if you don't know what to do, 3 months later, you say, oh, forget about the American market. I better stay focused on the European market because it's right behind the corner. I can travel in an hour everywhere from Italy or from Spain or from Switzerland, blah, 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 blah. The American market is an amazing opportunity for everybody, but you have to approach the American market with a very open-minded approach. Again, don't think that things does not happen in one day. I always said to myself, Rome was not built in a day, but that's very true. Give yourself some time. The American market, these two gentlemen, Jeremy and Steve, they want to see multiple times you in the marketplace, because you have to build your own reputation and credibility when you get into the market. If you come once or twice and then you disappear, you are out of the business, because even if you do the most amazing item, the most amazing pasta, the most amazing honey, the most amazing extra virgin olive oil in the world. And I've seen tons of examples of amazing Italian and European companies that are not successful at all in this marketplace, although they do a product which is much better and better performing, better price, better quality than a lot of other company, the same category, that are super successful. It's a matter of approach, of mentality. First of all, you have to build a reputation, because the American players, they want to deal with reliable partners. Then it takes time to build a reputation. You have to go to this national food show many times. Don't do it only once or twice. Fancy Food Show, for example, is right behind the corner. They make 2 fancy food show per year. One is the summer edition, which is this one in New York. And then we have the winter edition. This used to be in San Francisco. Then they moved to Las Vegas after the COVID. Next year is going to be in San Diego. Probably in 2 years is going to be back to San Francisco. They want to see you in both. You stand by the Italian pavilion, or by the Spanish pavilion, or by the Swiss pavilion, whatever, but you want to stay there. You're going to see the same distributors and the same people more than once. The very first time, you just exchange some business cards, you send them your product catalog, and nothing happened. The next edition, they come back to you. They see that you are there again. So they say, oh, these guys, they are investing money in this market. They are there again. You got to be willing to send them samples. You got to be willing to establish a relationship. So once the relationship is set, you can go to the next level. The next level is exactly what Kamal said, and also the wishful thinking of Jeremy and Steve before. Oh, we prefer to deal with people that have a foot here in the United States of America. They have a warehouse, they have an office, they have a representative, they have somebody. It takes time sometimes to have an employee over there, to have an established office there. I mean, an incorporated branch, American branch. So sometimes the very first decision to be taken is that to give everything in the hand of an importer, because that's the step that a lot of small companies that approach the United States for the very first time, they do. They give their business in the hand of an importer. The importer can be interesting for you guys, but is not the solution on long-term basis, because the importer just buy from you and resell to the United States and build a screen in between you and the market, because you are on this side of the ocean, they are on the other side of the ocean. You don't know what's going on, but then depending on the size of your business, you are a small company, you have only 20 employees or 30 employees in Italy, and you are all busy to develop the European market. You want to put a foot in the United States, so you don't have resources, you don't have personnel to support your penetration. You give everything in the hand of an importer. An importer can be interesting in the very beginning, but in the long term, you don't have a clear and full understanding of the market. So sooner or later, you will decide to go ahead on your own and to start to try to be closer and stay closer to that market. That's exactly the same approach that the company that I'm working for now is doing. I work for an Italian company. It's a $150 million company, which is big size company. They always work with importers in America. But they have a branch, they have an office. So they decided to hire me a few years ago. Previously I was with Belgioioso cheese. I don't know if you know Belgioioso. I think so. It's one of the most important and amazing company in the United States. It's an American company. It's not an Italian company, although the owners are Italian. Belgioioso cheese is one of the leading, of course, cheese companies. They have 2 flags crossing, the Italian and the American flag. They say classic Italian cheeses made in the United States. So they are the same company that the Italians and the Europeans, they ate a little bit because they say, oh, they are fake. We are the real deal because we do Parmigiano Reggiano. We don't do Parmesan. We do a Grana Padano. We don't do American Grana, but they are a successful company. Once I joined Surgital, I decided to go into a very deep understanding of their penetration in the marketplace. So we built regional distributors. We have distributors in almost every American, in every state. When you approach and you work with these distributors, then you have to stay very close to each one of them. You have to train them. You have to participate to their food shows. You have to attend their Friday morning meetings for the sales people and the sales staff. They want to know more about your products and your line. But this is a step that you're going to take after a few years that you are in the marketplace. So the very first approach is this food show. Give some time to yourself. Send samples to everyone is going to ask you for samples. Your samples are your business cards. Don't be reluctant to ship samples, even if it costs you hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars per year, shipping via UPS or next day delivery or FedEx or whatever. Do that. That's your business cards. Okay. And then you build your knowledge of the American market, starting with one guy, then two guys, supporting these guys the best that you can. In the meantime, you build your reliability and your reputation with these potential leads. And then it's a process. One after another, you expand your business. You got to be sure, and that's one, this webinar is being organized by Gen USA. I tell you, we utilize the services of Gen USA very successfully. We utilize their services. I know the American market quite well, and I am actually on this other side of the barricade because I represent an Italian company crossing the ocean, having a warehouse in New Jersey, selling products to tons of American distributors.
And it sounds like Johnny, from the advice that you're giving, it's not a one-way ticket. There's not one path avenue. You describe having the company, having a warehouse, working with importers, hiring the people, hiring the staff. We have a question here in the chat that kind of you've answered it in a way. What advice would you give to somebody in their position? So a specialty food product that's already well positioned in a premium price. They already have an established company in the US, and they're asking whether or not it's better to go with distributors, brokers, because now they're currently attending the Fancy Food Show. Do you think it's too soon to start, the growth, or should they wait until they start getting orders?
Now, listen, the thing is this, again, we have to understand the level of penetration of these companies in the marketplace. Is an already established brand that is already selling, they're already in my case, we have an established brand, we have a warehouse, we have operations managed by Gen USA. We have our own network of distributors, so that's a level of penetration. For beginners, of course, the very first approach they can have is to serve directly someone that is willing to buy from Italy. They do not have an office here. They do not have a warehouse. Rome was not built overnight. They cannot build a warehouse overnight. They cannot start having people, employees, and so the very first approach is to talking to importers, talking to distributors. They import from Italy, and they will ship from Italy. Of course, that's what everyone has done this the very first time.
And just a shameless plug here about what you're saying, Johnny. Meeting with these distributors firsthand, showing them your products in a more one-to-one kind of environment. Sorry, I had to because the question was just too perfect. But in an event like the one that we have coming up, if you attend the event, you will have the opportunity to meet with up to 10 buyers from large companies. Imagine not only the two guys you see here, Jeremy and Steve, but also representatives of Cisco, Sonia Toscano, Clark Associates, companies that do, millions and billions in revenue a year. Meeting them firsthand, I guess, in my opinion, which is why we do these and why we've been successful over the years having these events, is because people find them as a low cost way. So with a small investment, they have direct access. So it's not so busy as a trade show. It's one-on-one meetings. It's a way to network with other companies in a similar situation. I know that Johnny, you mentioned a lot about the different approaches that you need to take. It's not just a one-way approach, and this could be, one of those approaches. No.
Yeah, but listen, I was looking here at the list of your participating companies, Okay, besides these two gentlemen, Jeremy and Steve, they are already booked for meetings with me, of course, at the webinar at the evening in Manhattan. Let's say we have Sonia Toscano, Cisco, Beyond Gourmet. Okay. I tell you, I don't work with Sonia Toscano. I love them. Nice, great people. I know a guy that is Dario Menini and Cisco. Cisco is the number one account in the food service in the United States. That's a huge company, but it's not for everyone. So you will discover on your own when you talk to Cisco about the opportunities, but also on the other side, if you are not ready, you probably are not ready to go with Cisco. If your operation are very small, it's not just a matter of having a great product and the buyer comes to you and say, "Oh, what an amazing item that you have." Then there is operation, there is SUPC codes, delivery, warehousing, distribution. Maybe you have an amazing product, but for Cisco at the end, you are not interested. But Beyond Gourmet is a very small distributor from Texas. I work with Beyond Gourmet as well. They are small distributors. They can be the right answer for those who do not have the size and the possibility, also the production capability to make Cisco happy. But you may be the perfect fit for Beyond Gourmet. So you're gonna have every company has its own potential partner on the other side of the. So during this meeting, during this B2B networking event, you have to understand exactly who you're talking to, and they want to understand exactly who they are talking to. You have to explain them who you are, how big you are, if you can ship, if you cannot ship. If you have too small manufacturing capability, forget about the big guys, because they may ask you to ship them by containers, and you can't do that. So it's an understanding. So it's a process of understanding in the marketplace. I think you have a variety of distributors here, of potential partners that are all different from the other. You have huge distributor like Cisco, you have medium. Sonia Toscano has many amazing locations in the United States, but they are more local and more regional. So probably the approach can be easier with them. And then you have a very small distributor like Beyond Gourmet. So I think that it's interesting. I think that it's going to be, guys, when you go back after these networking events, you're going to have a better picture of the situation. Then you're going to spend 3 days in New York at the Fancy Food Show. You're going to be approached by other people. And then you build your own knowledge of the marketplace.
I'm curious. This question is for Johnny, but also for Jeremy and Steve. But in particular, the food preferences in the United States, because in Europe you're used to making your food in a certain quality, a certain taste. Have you had to make any changes or adaptations to the U.S. market? First and foremost to Johnny, and the back half of the question will be towards Jeremy and Steve. Have you ever been in a position where you're able to make recommendations to a vendor to say, okay, we really like your products, but perhaps do it in this way for the American consumer?
Again, it depends if you're talking food service or you're talking retail. I give you an example. In retail, we do stir fried bags of, for example, spaghetti cacio e pepe.
Oh, I think he's frozen.
He just froze. Let's give him a minute to come back in. I guess I'll take the opportunity now to ask to Jeremy and Steve, and when he comes back, we can get him
Yeah,
back.
I mean, I think just to expand on where I think he was going with that, the package is it's gonna be you have retail and you have HoReCa or hospitality or commercial food service, what have you. So packaging requirements in that regard, and organic is a pretty loosely defined term that seems to be thrown around day in and day out. You're gonna need to clearly separate yourself from those that use that term that's out there. So. Yeah. Okay, Gianni, I think you're back. You were
He's
frozen
back.
there
He's
for a
Yeah,
back.
I'm back. No, I just want to tell you very, 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 very shortly. Yes, Jeremy was mentioning about packaging. Yes, of course. But again, it depends if you're talking about food service or retail. These are two different, completely different words, because retail means that you stay on the shelf. So that's packaging has to be in a certain way, and also the way you build the packaging has to be a certain size, a certain information that you sell there. But this is something doable. Let's put it this way. We do retail. You know how many times our samples they cross the ocean because then you have to add a little bit more of black pepper. Oh no, there is not. I want more garlic. No, I want more sugar. I want more this. I want more that. Sometimes it's 1 year back and forth until you reach the final formula and the final recipe to be successful in the marketplace. So retail, you probably have to make adjustments depending on the type of product. Of course, the Checo and Barilla, that's dry pasta. They can, you know, that's the marketplace. They don't do special item for the American market because the pasta is pasta. Spaghetti are spaghetti, macaroni, penne are penne, whatever, cavatelli are cavatelli, whatever. In the food service industry, I mean, serving distributor that serves restaurants. I'm trying to make things very, very basic, for everyone to understand. Packaging is not an issue. It's not a big issue because you're shipping products to restaurants, and these guys they usually want. In our case, I mean, 6.6 pounds is a 3 kilo bag, bulk. They don't want small bags because they don't want to open and close and waste all this packaging, whatever. So probably from a certain point of view, in my opinion, the food service market is easier than the retail market because food service is just a matter for the chef to taste your products and to pick which product they want. Of course, we do filled pasta. We can make adjustment with the size and the shape of the pasta with a certain filling. They may want to have the gorgonzola filling into the shape of the ravioli instead of the shape of the ground tortelloni or stuff like that, but it's much easier. Retail is more complicated, in my opinion. I don't know if Jeremy agrees with me or not.
I would, yeah, I would agree.
Let's say that, but on the other side also, retail takes more time to enter because you have to do this back and forth packaging information, taste, recipe, whatever. But numbers at the end of the day can be huge because if you are the manufacturing capability to match a 2 or 3 or 400 or 500 store locations across the United States. I don't want to say that you made bingo, but let's say it's a great thing. Of course, then you have to deserve to stay there because it's not just because you sold to Walmart or to Target or to Whole Foods that you are, oh, I'm done now. No, you have to work every day on that,
You got to earn that success every day. I would agree, no doubt. Yeah.
Okay, I think that to summarize, first of all, it's important to know very well the market and to differentiate the strategy based on what's your target, the geography, the knowledge, the size of the company, whatever. First of all, understand your customer. First of all, then it's very important to have your own organization in US. That what I mean that it is important to have your local legal entity for the company in the US, have a product stuck in the US to be delivered immediately or in a few days. And it's important to have local sales people in the US to get in touch immediately, and also the customer service in the US is much more important than in Europe or in Italy. This is the key pillars, the pillars for a European company to be successful in the US, and above all, give time so just be patient and push and keep searching. No, I have a question, last question for the buyers and also for Gianni. Now, at the moment, we have 10% of tariffs. No, and we don't know what is happening in the future after the July the 9th. What's your approach regarding the tariffs? Are you charging 10% more to the customers, or what's the strategy at the moment? If the tariffs will be always 10%, if you have a strategy.
That's the issue of the day. Oh, sorry, Jerry. No, you go ahead. Because I was struggling in the past 2 months. I struggle every day on this issue.
And I have another question. Are you worried about tariffs, or it's you can deal with the tariffs and whatever?
Thank you. I feel compelled to jump in. I'm a little tariff weary at this point, right? Tariff goes back and forth. It's my heart breaks for these companies that are selling from abroad coming into the U.S. It's a very volatile time. And although the news broke yesterday, I think our president said the deal is done with China. I'm not really sure what that means. I haven't dove into it at all prior to this call. I'm sure I'll learn more about it in the days ahead. But I think that'll be a competitive advantage, because I think the tariffs, or at least I anticipate the tariffs for products from beyond, maybe going towards China, will be significantly more than that from Europe. I did see one Italian company yesterday put forth the 10% increase to account for the tariffs. Now they mainly aluminum and stainless steel are going to be their most of their products. So it's out there. For the tariffs that are out there, is it being passed along to the consumer? I think we're all pretty well traveled here on this call, and all I can say is, I see restaurants full. I see check averages, it's more expensive, but there's still 4 people sitting at a table having dinner on a Tuesday night. Hotels are full, airlines are full. Will it impact hospitality and retail, these tariff things? I suppose it will eventually, and I'm sure there's plenty of reports right now today to say that it already has. But I'm not seeing it in hospitality in this very moment. Now, granted, we're into our busy summer season, so that's not going to be an accurate reading, and it's always a few months in arrears when you get those accurate numbers. But if it's being passed along, it hasn't dampened the consumer behavior as I see it. Honestly, we'll be in New York in another 3 or 4 weeks, and you tell me, New York City at the end of June, July, it'll be a busy place. It is anyway. So that's not really an accurate depiction across the board. Steve, what say you?
A few things I'd like to add. I would argue that this is an opportunity and not just a barrier, because the products in Europe are seen as such high quality and premium that might outweigh the choices that the buyers have in terms of lowering the costs or purchasing a lower cost product from somewhere else, because the consumer wants these high quality products. And in the US, we have been dealing with inflation for several years. I know some places in Europe haven't had the same type of inflation that we have. I still see prices going up. So the consumer is actually, well, we'll say, adopted this notion of higher prices continuously. And I think depending where you are playing in the market, that will easily just get passed on to the consumer. Again, it depends on what type of product, where you're playing in the market. That's how I see it playing out. And again, it's a lot of it will be tied to your strategy. Certainly, if you're in the Northeast compared to different parts of the US, there's more money, more disposable income, higher salaries and such. So that might play into your broader strategy and how you're building your credibility over the long term.
Yeah, I
Okay.
would like to add a little
Yeah.
thing. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, no.
Okay, because
Please
my line,
go on.
unfortunately, no, that's the struggle in between the imported and the domestic products, that there is always. So we as an imported items here in America, I think we don't really compete with the domestic manufacturer. Again, that's what I want to think. Because, of course, the imported item, by definition, they have a very high quality, very unique, very highly differentiated. Some domestic items are very basic. For example, I don't think that the Parmigiano Reggiano 24 month or 32 months competes with the Parmesan. There are two different marketplaces. The Parmigiano, if a chef wants the Parmigiano Reggiano, he buys the Parmigiano Reggiano, period. He doesn't buy. And I tell you, I was also on the other side of the barricade because I worked for 5 years for Belgioioso cheese. So let's say, hey, come on. But I still carry the Italian flags, even if I was working for Belgioioso. And you know that Belgioioso cheeses are proudly made in Wisconsin. So Wisconsin is dairyland. I'm fine. Listen, the highest respect for all the domestic manufacturer of the American. I compete with domestic manufacturer of fresh pasta. Okay. So the fresh pasta, the dry pasta, 90% comes from Italy. The fresh pasta is made with eggs and made blah, 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 blah. Every restaurant, they make their own fresh pasta. There are tons of domestic, small artisanal company in America. They do a very decent product. So I'm nothing against this guy. Our product is different. It's made in a different way. The ingredients are different. The cheeses that we use are DOP cheeses, Parmigiano Reggiano, Grana Padano, Taleggio, whatever, Burrata di Puglia. So we have to be able to build a great reputation for our own items. I don't want to talk bad about the domestic items. You will never hear me doing this. We have to highlight the beauty of our products and the quality of our products. Talking about tariffs and talking about prices, I agree, Jeremy. I agree, Steve. I notice prices are in restaurants. They're rising prices almost every week now. I remember the pizza was way below the $20. Now it's way above the $30. A regular margherita pizza. So, okay, tariffs, but there is another hidden tariff, which is the weakness of the American dollars. American dollars has lost 10% in the marketplace. So we have had the combination at the same time of 10% tariff plus an additional 10% of dollar weakness. Because usually in America, we buy from Europe in euros and we sell in American dollars here. So you understand if when the euro and the America were and the US dollars were 1-1, okay, now is 1.14. So which is way above the 10% increase. So we have had an extra cost at the end of the day of a 20% in these days.
You are saying that the demand is still strong, so they will.
The demand is still strong.
Okay.
That's how I feel. Yeah, the demand is still there.
It's still
Okay.
there. So I tell you, I would be a little bit okay. Probably for the attendees, they are interested in this point. The strategy, I like all the others, we increase the prices, the price list. I increased the price list effective June 2nd. Some other people was May 20 or whatever. Anyway, there is a tricky point now. There is a frozen additional 10% tariff on July 9th that is still pending in all these talks.
Right.
I tell you, quite honestly, these first 10% tariffs that we are already paying didn't bother me too much. We for 2 years and a half, we didn't increase our price list in the past. So it's physiologic, you know, it's okay. This, if in case the EU and the US administration won't reach a satisfactory win-win solution for the tariffs, and for example, if another extra 10% tariffs will be starting after July 9, this would be boring a little bit myself, I think, because that's still the market is great, still the market is amazing, still the demand is there, but then it's going to be too much because it's going to be at the end of the day, the first 10%, the second 10%, plus the weakness of the American dollars is 30%. Then, you see, if I want to go out in the restaurants and having an amazing margherita pizza with burrata di Puglia, blah blah, I'm still buying that, no matter if it costs $28 or $32. It's not a matter of $4, but it's not. I think I do hope that these two administrations, the EU and the American administration, can find a satisfactory solution to live in peace for a long time ahead, because that's what we want. We need stability. We don't need unpredictability, because I tell you, the past 2 months were kind of tough from this point of view, you know, because we want to know what's going on. Okay, you want to raise the tariff 20%, raise the tariffs 20%, and then stop. And then we build our own strategy, you know. But there are still too many issues unsolved, unfortunately. That I do hope, it seems that they are trying to solve in these days. I do hope that they're going to find a solution, because that's fair. It was fair probably for the USA to raise the tariffs, because there was a surplus that was too much on the European side, and that's understandable. That's economy. That's the way it is, you know. But now we need to know exactly what's going on, and we want to know this now as soon as possible in order to build our own strategy, because in the food industry, we are not at the stock exchange. The price of stocks, they change overnight. Today's one thing, tomorrow is up, then it goes down. We can't change too much every day. And to close this issue, myself, like 1,000 other company, we filled I don't know how many containers of products from Europe to here in order to arrive and to clear the custom before July 9, because, you know, it's important, you know, at the end, 10% on $1 million importing is $100,000.
Sure. And to add to that, Johnny, what you're going to see is a classic example of whiplash in the supply chain. You're going to have companies that send all sorts of product over here, and maybe the 10% sticks. Maybe it changes. You know, nobody's got that crystal ball. I think we're in for another 3.5 years of that sort of volatility. But back to the point, you'll have all that inventory here, and then you won't. Your normal shipping patterns, ordering patterns, is going to be disrupted. So that whiplash for the operations and logistics people, it's a nightmare because it makes it incredibly difficult.
Listen, Jeremy, you know that there is a long line of boats, of ships on the
Long
New York
Beach.
port. I got a shipment, probably tomorrow is arriving. It was supposed to arrive 15 days ago. It's standing outside of the New York port since 2 weeks. It stays there more than the shipping time from Genova to New York, which is 12 days. But then we have an additional 2 or 3 weeks waiting in line. So anyway, listen, we are business people, but of course, I don't want to scare the attendees here that are listening to us, but that's the way it is. You see, we are going through many different items: quality of the products, product catalog, FDA regulations, pricing, having a warehouse in America, struggling with tariffs. These people, they have to be prepared that this market can be extremely, extremely rewarding for everybody, extremely rewarding, not a little bit, just extremely. But nothing comes with nothing. You have to work, you have to stay there, you have to understand, you have to study every day, you have to have big ears, radar, and whatever. Then you can really make a big splash in the American market.
At the end of the story, but after all this effort, the market rewards the company that is there. So it is true. After many efforts, for sure you will have a lot of revenues usually if you use the correct strategy. Okay, I think that I would like to thank everybody, Jeremy, Steve, Gianni. It has been a very, very interesting webinar. And also, I would like to invite the audience to attend our event June 28th, that is Saturday. So we would like to see everybody at this event. Kamal, please go ahead with the conclusion of the webinar.
So thank you, Mauro, for that, and thank you again to Johnny, Steve, and Jeremy. We look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks. And for anybody who hasn't registered yet, please feel free to send us an email. We will send you a follow-up email in the next hour or so with detailed information. But if you want to register for the event, you can email my colleague, Sofia Valigi. And if you look at the left over there, it's sofia.valigi@gen-usa.com. Also, in the email reply that I'll send to everybody, there will be some more details, contact information. One last thing I wanted to note is that we only have a few more spots left. So the sooner you sign up, the sooner you have the ability to select which buyer you would like to meet with. For every company coming, they get to pick their top 3 buyers, and we do our best to accommodate your request. So if you would like to meet with any one of these great guys that you heard speak today, make sure to register and select them on the registration form. Additionally, we have 8 more companies from buying groups. Thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you all in a few weeks.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Thanks,
you.
Kamal.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you all.